I am an alcoholic, and I'm going to be reading from the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. I love this book of Alcoholics Anonymous. It is the whole and complete answer. Has been, will be, and will continue to be for the time that I've been sober and the future for me. If it's not written, I won't do it. The Book of Alcoholics Anonymous has said to me the same thing today that it has said to me when I first began to read it, when I first began to comprehend some of the things that were in it. It says the same thing. It's never changed for me, and this is what I've loved about it. I have a relationship with the Book of Alcoholics Anonymous. I believe that it can't be watered down. I believe that I must adhere to these principles. I believe that the black lines of this book are what I go by. I don't interpret it. I don't change it. I believe it's as good now as it was the day it's written. The same as gin back in 1935 was gin, and in 1975 it was gin, and in 1985 it will still be gin, and I guess in 1995, which is not here yet, it'll still be called gin, and it'll still have the same effects as I believe the Book of Alcoholics Anonymous will. I believe it is the only true way of an alcoholic of my kind. And my kind, when I drank, I got drunk. And so I just want to put that out front. I want to say that this is what I believe, because that's why I'm doing this reading. That's why I'm want to put back, or whatever the case may be. I believe so much in this book. So I'm going to be reading from my book that I started with, one of them that I started with, but anyway, it's the one I've worked out of for years. And I'm going to stop and tell you some of the things that have been important to me, and that what is really said. Sometimes I hear things at meetings and from the book, and it's not said that way. So I want to share. This is what I want to do. I want to share. I want to share what I've known and the experiences that I have over the years that I've been sober, and that's what I'm doing. So let's begin and keep my mouth shut here a little bit. Chapter 2. There is a solution. Right away. Right away, I can stop right there and just get excited over the fact that it says in bold letters, there is a solution. So if you're a drunk, wow, there's a beginning. There is a solution. Very important. We of Alcoholics Anonymous know thousands of men and women who were once just as hopeless as Bill. That's Bill Wilson. Nearly all have recovered. They have solved their drink problem. I underline that. I underline that because in clear statements it says, nearly all have recovered. Nearly. Doesn't say all. They have solved the drink problem. And I like that for the hope that, how do I not drink? How do I stay away? Well, here's the answer. Nearly all have recovered. They have solved their drink problem, and I like that. We are average Americans, all sections of this country, and many of its occupations are represented, as well as many political, economical, and social and religious backgrounds. We are people who normally wouldn't mix, but there exists among us a fellowship, a friendliness, and an understanding which is incredibly wonderful. We are like the passengers of a great liner the moment after the rescue from shipwreck, when camaraderie, joyousness, and democracy pervade the vessel from steerage to captain's table. Unlike the feelings of the ship's passengers, however, our joy in escape from disaster does not subside as we go our individual ways. The feeling of having shared in a common peril is one element in the powerful cement which binds us. But that in itself would never have held us together as we are now joined. That just sort of gives a brief outline of the alcoholic, of all the types that it takes, and here we are sitting at the captain's table. What a deal! Now the next line is exciting. It's exciting because, to me, I want to say that this is what my reading. This is my thing, so to speak, to put down. So I'm going to get a little excited at times, and I'm going to go, ugh, but it's okay. Here's a line that is probably one of the most powerful lines for a suffering alcoholic, and it goes like this: the tremendous fact for every one of us is that we have discovered a common solution. We have a way out on which we can absolutely agree, and upon which we can join in brotherly harmonious action. This is the great news this book carries to those who suffer from alcoholism. The tremendous fact. A common solution. A common one. A way out on which we can absolutely agree. And I needed so much when I first came into AA to find a way out of this jackpot, a way out of whatever it was I was in. To please don't confuse me. Don't confuse me. I needed something that was solid. I needed something that we could agree on. I needed something that could be there all the time and not change. And there it was. I'm reading this, but I'm not giving you dates when I found this or how long I was sober, but it was in the course of my sobriety that I began to pick up on some of these lines, and now they've become very dear to me. But what a powerful line. I mean, a common solution. Absolutely agree. And that was, to this day, it's one of the great lines within my framework of the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. I've underlined that line. I've underlined this next line. An illness of this sort, and we have become to believe it an illness. I needed something, I got it, an illness. Involves those about us in a way no other human sickness can. If a person has cancer, all are sorry for him and no one is angry or hurt. But not so with the alcoholic illness. For with it there goes annihilation of all things worthwhile in life. It engulfs all whose lives touch the sufferers. It brings misunderstanding, fierce resentment, financial insecurity, disgusted friends and employers, warped lives of blameless children, and sad wives and parents. Anyone can increase the list. Now, that's so powerful of a statement. It depicts with certainty the situation of an alcoholic, the situation of a drunk, the situation of a man or woman who suffers from this illness. The people and the places and things that this disease, illness, as it is set up above, engulfs. And when I read lines like that, I realize the powerfulness of this book and the powerfulness of the men who put it together and women who put it together. We hope This volume will inform and comfort those who are or who may be affected. There are many. Highly competent psychiatrists who have dealt with us have found it sometimes impossible to persuade an alcoholic to discuss his situation without reserve. Strangely enough, wives, parents, and intimate friends usually find us even more unapproachable than do the psychiatrists and the doctors. That puts us in a very unique position. Nobody understands. And this next line solves that problem. And I have underlined this next line. But with the ex-problem drinker, who has found this solution, who is properly armed with facts about himself, can generally win the entire confidence of another alcoholic in a few hours. I underline that first part there. Until such an understanding is reached, little or nothing can be accomplished. The lines that I haven't underlined are also important. Don't misunderstand me on this, that I'm just going through and underlining lines that are important only to me. They're all important, but these are the ones that I have underlined, and the ones that aren't underlined are also important. So in reality, they're all important. And it goes, isn't that tremendous? But the ex-problem drinker who has found this solution, who is properly armed with facts about himself, can generally win the entire confidence of another alcoholic in a few hours. One drunk talking to another, huh? One drunk talking to another. The psychiatrist, the wives, the parents, the intimate friends can't do it, but one drunk, another drunk, or an ex-problem drinker, as it says here, can win the entire confidence of another alcoholic in a few hours. And if you've ever seen the eyes of another alcoholic who are sick, you'll understand what that statement means. The hope comes in the eyes, and pretty soon, the guy may pick up and live, or the gal may pick up and live. And until such an understanding is reached, little or nothing can be accomplished. Little or nothing can be accomplished. That the man who is making an approach has had the same difficulty, that he obviously knows what he is talking about, that his whole deportment shouts at the new prospect that he is a man, real answer. Wow, a real answer. That he has no attitude holier than thou, and I underline this next line, nothing whatever except the sincere desire to be helpful. I underline that. Nothing whatever except the sincere desire to be helpful. That's it. That's what it says in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. The next line also, I didn't underline, but it sort of puts it where it's at. That there are no fees to pay. Oh, wow. No axes to grind, no people to please, no lectures to endure. These are the conditions. These are the conditions we have found most effective. Why change them, I say? That's the purity of the book of Alcoholics Anonymous. These are the conditions which we have found most effective. That's what it says. After such an approach, many take up their beds and walk again. After such an approach, many take up their beds and walk again. And that's the approach. No fees to pay. Wow. How many people are being charged today? I don't know. But I don't want to get into that. But there's your first thing about giving it away for free. Giving it away. Giving it away. And that's the first few words that it says there. Now here's an answer to the people that say, well, I can't do what you can do. I can't devote all this energy to Alcoholics Anonymous. I can't, and on and on and on and on. Well, here in the book of Alcoholics Anonymous is an answer. And it goes like this, and I underline this. None of us makes a sole vocation of this work. That's working with newcomers. Nor do we think its effectiveness would increase if we did. We feel that elimination of our drinking is but a beginning. A much more important demonstration of our principles lies before us in our respective homes, occupations, and affairs. I underline that whole thing there, because it is so vitally important to know that maybe there are some people who can't work with alcoholics, as much as other people. And so they say, well, I'll get drunk. No. It doesn't say that. It says in clear, it says, none of us makes a sole vocation, nor do we think its effectiveness would be increased if we did. And then that there's a great demonstration of these principles in our respective homes and occupations and affairs. All of us spend much of our spare time in this sort of effort which we are going to describe. And a few are fortunate enough to be situated that they can give nearly all of their time to this work. A few are fortunate enough. If we keep on the way we are going, there is little doubt that much good will result. But the surface of the problem would hardly be scratched. Those of us who live in large cities are overcome by the reflection that close by hundreds are dropping into oblivion every day. I misread that. Those of us who live in large cities are overcome by the reflection that close by hundreds are dropping into oblivion each day. Many could recover if they had the opportunity we have joined. I underline this next line. How then shall we present that which has been so freely given us? How then shall we present that which has been so freely given us? Another line about freely giving it away. That's twice. We haven't even begun to read this book yet. Oh, there I go again. We have concluded to publish an anonymous volume setting forth the problem as we see it. We shall bring to our task, and I underline this, we shall bring to our task our combined experience and knowledge. This should suggest a useful program for anyone concerned with a drinking problem. Now there it is, I underline that. We shall bring to our task our combined experience and knowledge. This should suggest a useful program for anyone concerned with a drinking problem. Of necessity, there will have to be discussions of matters medical, psychiatric, social, and religious. We are aware that these matters are, from the very nature, controversial. Nothing would please us so much as to write a book which would contain no basis for contention or argument. We shall do our utmost to achieve that idea. People talk about tolerance and about answers in the book of Alcoholics Anonymous. Well, let's throw out another big answer. How about this one, for starters? Most of us sense that real tolerance of other people's shortcomings, and this I had underlined, and a viewpoint, shortcomings and points, respect for their opinions, are attitudes which make us more useful to others. I'm going to read that again because it's so. I sit there with my own attitude and my own viewpoint, but here is something that I must also extend to the other individual. Most of us sense that real tolerance of other people's shortcomings, and viewpoints, and a respect for their opinions. Now that doesn't mean I got to go along with their opinions. It just says it means I got to respect their opinions. tolerance of a shortcoming. They talk too much, or they yell too much, or they're too cantankerous, or what. And their viewpoints, they may be totally off base. I just have to tolerate them. I don't have to go along with them. I love it. I love it. It's my way out. It is. And this attitude that I have towards these people, this attitude that I've had towards this, if I put this into perspective, they make me more useful to others. And here's the second line that I believe, and now that's underlined, but here's the second line in the book of Alcoholics Anonymous that I found when I was probably about 9 months or 10 months sober. I believe, and this is only my belief, but I believe that this next line that I'm going to read right now can change the destiny of the world in one split second. I believe that the world would be a utopia if everybody exercised this next line. And this is what the line is. And this is truly underlined. And it is the second line of the book of Alcoholics Anonymous that I got. No, I'm sorry, I take that back. It's the third line. Our very lives as ex-problem drinkers depend upon our constant thought of others and how we may help meet their needs. Our very lives as ex-problem drinkers depend upon our constant thought of others and how we may help meet their needs. I just think about that and try to fulfill part of that in my life, and it's unbelievable. I worked on that line for a year, and at the end of a year's time, I could devote at least 10 seconds to another human being. It was one of the most difficult concepts to put forth in my life. Literally trying to think about another human being. It was very difficult. But I as the years have progressed and time has gone, I've been able to do it. I've been able to at least a percentage of the time think about other people and how I can help meet their needs. But it is an attitude change that is awesome. A meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous is not for me to take out of. In a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous for me is to put into and to think of somebody else. And it's not easy sometimes. But nonetheless, if my life is dependent upon this, I must begin to put that arduous thing into my working mind, so to speak, what's ever left of it. But it is a very powerful, a very beautiful, it's an action line, and it takes away the selfishness. It takes away the selfishness of everything and every mode of thought processes in my head. If I can inject a small portion of this, and this is what this line means to me. You may have already asked yourself, why is it that all of us become so very ill from drinking? Doubtless you are curious to discover how and why, in the face of expert opinion to the contrary. We have recovered from a hopeless condition of mind and body. If you are alcoholic who wants to get over it, you may already be asking, what do I have to do? And that's in quotes. What do I have to do? I haven't underlined that, but that paragraph, would you like to have a guy come in or a woman come in and say, what do I have to do? And just tell them? It's beautiful. Just say, what do I have to do? Well, it is the purpose of this book to answer such questions specifically, and I have got that underlined. It is the purpose of this book to answer such questions specifically. The question of what do I have to do, that's the purpose of this book, specifically. We shall tell you what we have done. And that's, I underlined both those little lines. Before going into detailed discussion, it may do well to summarize some points as we see them. How many times have people said to us, "I can take it or leave it alone. Why can't he? Why don't you drink like a gentleman or quit? That fella can't handle his liquor. Why don't you try beer and wine? Lay off the hard stuff. His willpower must be weak. He could stop if he wanted to. She's such a sweet girl. I should think he'd stop for her sake. The doctor told him that if he'd ever drank again, it would kill him. But there he is, all lit up again." Now these are commonplace observations on drinkers, which we have all the time. Back of them is a world of ignorance and misunderstanding. We see these expressions referred to people whose reactions are very different from ours. Moderate drinkers have little trouble in giving up liquor entirely if they have good reason for it. They can take it or leave it alone. Moderate drinkers. They can take it or leave it alone. Then we have a certain type of hard drinker. He may have the habit badly enough to gradually impair him physically and mentally. It may cause him to die a few years before his time. If it is sufficiently strong reason, it may cause him to die a few years before his time. If a sufficiently strong reason, ill health, falling in love, change of environment, or the warning of a doctor becomes operative, this man may also stop or moderate, although he may find it difficult and troublesome, and may even need medical attention. I didn't underline these things, but those are important factors. But what about the real alcoholic? The real alcoholic. Now we're starting to talk about something. Huh? He may start off as a moderate drinker. He may be or may not become a continuous hard drinker, but at some stage of his drinking career he begins to lose control of his liquor consumption once he starts to drink. Here is a fellow who is puzzling you, especially in the lack of control. He does absurd, incredible, tragic things while drinking. I underline this next part. He is a real Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. He is seldom mildly intoxicated. He is always more or less insanely drunk. His disposition while drinking resembles his normal nature but little. I underline that. He may be one of the finest fellows in the world. I did not underline that. I underline this next part. Yet let him take a drink for a day and he frequently becomes disgustingly and even dangerously antisocial. I underline that. He has a positive genius for getting tight at exactly the wrong moment, particularly when some important decision must be made or engagement kept. He is so often perfectly sensible and well-balanced concerning everything except liquor. Man, that is something. Everything except liquor. When you talk about liquor, then, oh no, don't want to hear about that stuff. But in that respect, he is incredibly dishonest and selfish. But in that respect, when you're talking about liquor, it says, but in that respect, he is incredibly dishonest and selfish. I underline that. So powerful. He often possesses special ability, skills, and attitudes, and has a promising career ahead of him. He uses his gifts to build up bright outlook for his family and himself, and then pulls the structure down on his head by a senseless series of sprees. He is a fellow who goes to bed so intoxicated he ought to sleep the clock around, yet early next morning he searches madly for the bottle he has misplaced the night before. If he can afford it, he may have liquor concealed all over the house. To be certain no one gets his entire supply away from him to throw down the water pipe, the waste pipe. As matters grow worse, he begins to use combinations of high-powered sedatives and liquor to quiet his nerves. so he can go to work. There's the word sedative, right in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. The big controversy of drugs and alcohol. That takes that out of the picture, doesn't it? So he can go to work. Then comes a day when he simply cannot make it and gets drunk all over again. Perhaps he goes to a doctor who gives him some morphine or some sedative, which to taper off. Then he begins to appear at hospitals and sanitariums. The big controversy of drug addicts and alcoholics. Well, in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, there it says, perhaps he goes to a doctor who gives him morphine or some sedative with which to taper off with. There we go again. This is by no means a comprehensive picture of the true alcoholic. Our behavior patterns vary, but this description would identify him roughly. Wow, I'd hate to see specifically.